Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. My name is Emily Burks, and tonight we are going to explore Verona, Padova, and Ravenna with tour guide extraordinaire Patricia Fannon. I am very excited to have you on the show. Patricia is one of our fabulous Rick Steves tour guides, and she also joined us on MNT back in October of 2022, where she covered her adopted home of the Italian Lakes District. And that is an excellent episode, and everyone who is traveling to that region should definitely go back and watch it. But for now, Patricia, I am wondering if you can give us a little teaser to your hometown. What is life like on Lake Garda?
Well, Emily, I live in Riva del Garda, which is Italy's, Lake Garda is Italy's largest lake. Riva is in Trentino Alto Adige, so it's one of the first towns in the region of Trento. We're alpine here in the north, the south is Mediterranean. So, but we still have olive trees, which is very rare. So we have olive trees, lemons. It's very simple. There's lots of fine architecture from the medieval period. There's some even Roman villas here. It's a quiet place, but not in the summer months because people come here to sail, to canoe, to hike, to visit the monuments. Lots of families from all over Europe. So it's fun in the summer.
Oh, gorgeous. Well, I hope you're having a wonderful summer. And as I mentioned, Patricia is one of our guides, and she is a busy woman. She leads 6 of our 9 Italy tour itineraries. And Patricia, I know you're not supposed to pick favorites, but if you had to, what would you say your favorite Italy tour itinerary to lead?
Oh, I don't know. I like Village Italy a lot. I don't really have a favorite, Emily. I love Hearts. I love Village. I like Sicily. I like them all.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. That makes your job all the more fun. Um, well, tonight we are actually going to explore 3 great cities in Patricia's backyard, and the two of us are going to watch one of Rick's TV episodes from 2014 with all of you, Italy's Verona, Padova, and Ravenna. And along the way, Patricia is going to add some extra insights and commentary, as well as some travel tips. And of course, at the end of the show, we will have a question and answer segment in case any burning travel questions arise while we're exploring these 3 cities. So, how does that sound, Patricia?
Sounds good.
All right, well, let's get started.
I'm not in Venice, but it feels like Venice, just without the canals. In its heyday, the island of Venice ruled a huge empire, and that included a good part of the Italian mainland, a region called the Veneto. With much of the charm and far fewer crowds, you could call this part of Italy sottoestimato, underestimated.
We'll marvel at precious Giotto frescoes, join pilgrims at the tomb of St. Anthony, and celebrate an irreverent university graduation. We'll see an ancient Roman arena in a modern urban setting, admire exquisite Byzantine mosaics, and make friends over a little grappa. Italy stretches, like Europe's boot, into the Mediterranean Sea. Venice sits near the top of the Adriatic Sea. Exploring a region called the Veneto, we'll visit Padova and Verona before finishing in Ravenna.
We're starting here in Padova. Like the rest of the Veneto, Padova was ruled by Venice from the 15th century until Napoleon came in about 1800. Chafing under Venetian rule for 4 centuries seemed only to sharpen Padova's independent spirit.
And that spirit survives at its prestigious university. Nicknamed the Brain of the Veneto, it was founded in 1222, one of the first in Europe. Renowned in its day, it was a haven for free thinking and attracted intellectuals from far and wide.
400 years ago, the great scientist Galileo, notorious for disagreeing with the church's views on science, enjoyed that academic freedom. He called the 18 years spent on the faculty here the best years of his life.
Okay, Patricia. Well, Rick alluded to the fact that Galileo was just one of many great thinkers at Padova University. What other famous alumni have walked these hallowed halls?
Well, someone very important, Thomas Harvey, who invented the circulation of blood. Then we have Gabriele Falloppio, who also discovered the fallopian tubes and their connection to the uterus. And the very first woman to get a university degree who was named Elena Lucrezia Cornaro Piscopio. Thank goodness in English we call her Eleanor Cornaro. And she was a bit of a child prodigy, you know. She came from a Venetian noble family, not just any old family. Her father was he was the Procuratore of Venice, so he was the second most important person in the Venetian Republic. And she could speak several languages when she was only 7 years old. She was fluent in, I believe, French, Spanish, I think it was Greek, Latin, and she eventually mastered Hebrew. She was a great mathematician, studied physics, and she wanted to study theology. But of course, the Archbishop of Padova, he wouldn't allow that because she was a woman. So she eventually got her university degree in philosophy. Casanova, he also studied at the university. Heavens knows what he studied, but he was there.
All right. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of big brains there, so I'm sure
Yeah.
lots of interesting discussions. And yeah, you mentioned that there was some anatomical discoveries that were made at the university. So up next, we are actually going to take a look at where some of that research may have been performed.
Everywhere you look, there are memories of illustrious alumni and professors. And within these historic lecture halls is Europe's oldest surviving anatomy theater from the late 1500s.
Back then, medical students would pack these steep balconies to watch professors dissect human cadavers. This was allowed by the government and the church as long as the cadavers were convicted foreign criminals.
Okay, so I just want to clear something up here. It sounds like the Roman Catholic Church did not allow autopsies until the late 1800s, but this anatomy theater dates back to the 1500s. So was the university holding these classes in secret?
No, Emily, no. It was allowed. Autopsies were allowed, especially if you could see an execution, and it went hand in hand. An execution with a visit to the anatomical theater. So usually somebody was executed, and then if there were no direct family members, the body was brought in here to be dissected. You know, so we hear these stories about they were not allowed. There were some cases where it was not allowed. For example, with the Crusaders, it was not allowed to dismember the body before having it sent back to its homeland, because very often they would dismember the bodies, boil them in water to separate the flesh from the bones to make the body lighter for transporting. So this sort of thing wasn't allowed. But we do have letters in Florence where people have even requested an autopsy for family members. And this was discovered by Harvard University. So when you hear people say it wasn't allowed by the Catholic Church, I'm sure there were certain circumstances, but the dissections were allowed.
So there were loopholes. And I believe, Patricia, when you and I were planning this episode together, you mentioned that in Bologna, I believe, they actually played music during the dissections.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that sounds like quite a scene.
And you can just imagine it had to be very, very swift because they didn't have anything really to preserve the bodies. And remind people, if they are going to Padua, it would be nice to reserve a visit here at the university to check this out online beforehand to make sure they can actually see this visit, to see the halls and also to visit the theater.
Wonderful.
So it should be reserved.
Great tip. Thank you. And now we are going to take a little bit of a turn for a lighter note and see what students might do once they graduate from Padova University.
This remarkable theater is an example of the importance placed on science during the Renaissance. With 60,000 students, Padova's university is always lively, and you're likely to stumble onto some kind of spirited school event. A unique ritual is the post-graduation roast. Friends gather around the new grad and the pranks begin. The gang presents a giant poster with a generally crude caricature of the graduate and a list of embarrassing personal stories for all to see. Then friends sing the catchy but obscene local university anthem, reminding their newly esteemed friend not to get too stuffy. Loosely translated, you may be a doctor, but you're still just a go yourself, go yourself. Finally, there's the playful send-off, like a rude birthing into the real world.
Okay, I want to spend just a little bit more time with these spirited students. So Patricia, could you tell us a little bit more about this tradition and what their costumes mean?
Well, basically, the costumes are just fun. But this tradition is called the papiro. The papiro, and it's where your friends get together and they write some poetry about you. They remind you of your most embarrassing moments. And they post these posters all over town. The more exposure, the better. And they have a party in your honor. And in Padova, these are dressed in the costumes. You can see they're wearing the traditional black robes. You can see the traditional black robes, which is when you graduate. Some of them have the robes. But also, the more traditional is a laurel wreath for the head. And they would wear a laurel. And the laurel goes back to the god Apollo. It goes back to the Greek times when Apollo was the god of poetry and music. And it's from the laurels that we get the word laureate. And they usually have ribbons. Now, the more traditional ones, the red is for law, the green are for the sciences, different colors. But also, they can have a lot of fun. They can dress up as Superman. They can dress as the Hulk, ballerinas, whatever, however they feel. But this tradition, when they're leaving, there is a chain, which we can't see the chain. There's a chain in Padova. And after the students graduate, they jump over the chain. And this symbolizes they have finally graduated. Now, in Padova, they say if you jump that chain before you graduate, it's unlucky. You might not finish your studies or you may be delayed. And there's lots of fun in the streets, People are just glad to finally get their degree because it really is no walk in the park. Defending your thesis there, it's tough. It's tough. So.
All right. Well, maybe if any of you at home would like to witness this ritual, you could plan your trip to Padova around their semester system, and maybe you'll catch some students celebrating the end of their studies.
Padova's old town, even when crowded with today's students, has a colonnaded old world elegance. Its charming lanes are lined with 17 miles of porticos, which come in a variety of styles. The main drag leads to one of the most important pilgrimage churches in all of Europe, the Basilica of St. Anthony. For nearly 800 years, pilgrims have flocked here to venerate the tomb of St. Anthony of Padova, one of Christianity's most popular shrines to one of the most popular saints. The basilica was begun a year after Anthony died in 1232 and is filled with magnificent art. Gracing the high altar are a group of bronze statues by the Renaissance master Donatello, the Crucifixion, and Mary, with Padova's favorite saints. The church feels alive with pilgrims from all corners. The former Polish chapel was recently renamed for St. John Paul II, canonized in 2014. And the side chapel containing St. Anthony's tomb is a Renaissance masterpiece from 1500. The pilgrims believe Anthony is their protector, confidant, and intercessor. Votives from the faithful ask for help or give thanks for miracles they believe he's performed. By placing their hand on his tomb while saying a silent prayer, pilgrims show devotion to Anthony and feel the saint's presence. Behind the high altar, pilgrims visit the relics of the saint, considered miraculously preserved, his vocal cords, tongue, and jawbone. These relics befit the saint who couldn't stop teaching, preaching, and praying. Padova's vast 14th century Palazzo della Ragione, once the town's medieval law court, now hosts a sprawling market. The scene has changed little over the centuries as merchants artfully display their goods. Since medieval times, shoppers have come here for the best Veneto produce. It's known for having the freshest and greatest selection of herbs, fruits, and vegetables. As you wander, appreciate the Italian passion for good food. Merchants share recipe tips with shoppers. Locals can tell the month by the seasonal selections. Strawberries and white asparagus? It's April. And in springtime, there's lots of work for the man who preps the artichokes.
All right, Patricia. Well, I love a good market in Italy, so I wanted to linger here a little while longer. And I'm wondering if this particular one in Padova is a tourist attraction or if you'll actually find locals shopping there.
It's a bit of both, Emily, because tourists love it. But the market itself is amazing. It's my favorite market in the whole of Italy, food market, especially the indoor, the cheeses, the hams, the fish. There's everything. The restaurants, the beautiful little bars, everything. Actually, it's where I get one of my favorite cheeses from, which is Parmigiano. But this is no ordinary Parmesan. This is Parmigiano from the red cows. That's right. It tastes nothing like the sawdust they sell us in some of the supermarkets. And it's made from the red cows, which are a sort of cow that were brought by the barbarians. That's right. With the fall of the empire, they came from Russia. And these cows have produced a milk which is rich in casein, phosphorus, calcium, and they make this lovely, delicious, soft cheese, which you can put on breadsticks, you think? And you can enjoy it with an Aperol spritz, which incidentally was invented in Padova.
I had no idea.
Yep, it was produced in Padova by two brothers, the Barbieri brothers, as you know, a bit of oranges, spices, and things in it. But it didn't do much until Campari bought the company. And with a bit of good marketing, you see this now in every piazza in Italy almost. So I have some goodies here. Then now this, an Aperol spritz. Spritzing comes from the German, because when the German soldiers or the Austrian soldiers were based in Italy before the unification, the wine was so strong, they would say spritzen, so put some water in it. So this is the Aperol liqueur, the Prosecco, and the water. Then I have here Piadina. Piadina, now Piadina is a flatbread from Emilia Romagna. And I made this one last night, you see, look.
Beautiful.
And I've cut it, normally it's circular, and I'm going to heat it later on. And this is a flatbread, which is from Emilia Romagna, so Ravenna. And you will find the Piadina on every corner in Ravenna. You will find usually with a soft, low-fat cheese called squaccheroni and ham, but you can have it with anything, sausages, mushrooms, brie, you name it. They put it in a Piadina. And it's nice, just heated. Oh, these are just some of the delights. But that market is amazing in Padova. It's amazing. You've got to go inside and buy some of the cheeses, the hams, and the specialities, and the olives stuffed with tuna. Everything in that market. It's a must-see.
Well, that sounds like an excellent place to go shopping for a picnic. And since you have some excellent treats over there, Patricia, I will turn things back over to Rick. So hopefully you can have a couple bites there.
Here. Would you like some?
Oh, I wish. I'll be over after the show.
Mm.
The indoor market, featuring various butchers and cheese shops, is a sensuous experience as well. Stalls and shops are often family-run, and the lineage of some of these merchants stretches back centuries. Town squares take on different personalities as the day goes on. Early in the evening, the stalls are gone and the piazzas become community gathering places. This is the time when, traditionally, students gather to enjoy the ritual of the aperitivo, lubricated by a spritz, or 3. This is the perfect opportunity for a traveler to grab a drink, strike up a conversation, and become part of the scene.
Aperitivo, you know? It's just to relax after, you know, your long day at work or at university.
You come to the piazza, and you know you're going to find friends.
It's always like, you know, you're going back home and you come here, you look around and you always see your friends. And you start to say, oh, let's have a drink together. And that's just normal.
You always see somebody. We don't say, oh my God, we're going to go have aperitivo, it's going to be a fun night. We're just like, hey, I'm in Piazza dei Signori. Do you want to drop by before I go home and have a bite to eat?
Sure.
So now, spritz, that's very trendy, I think.
Well, there's 2 different kind of spritz. You see the color is different.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's basically, this is with Aperol, which is lighter, and that one is with Campari. And then you put a slice of orange, usually ice and white wine or sparkling wine and a bit of water also.
Whatever your favorite drink, everyone, including tourists, is welcome to enjoy this convivial Italian ritual.
Okay, so as Rick just said, piazzas do tend to shape-shift over the course of the day. In the morning, they might host a market. By the afternoon, friends are gathering there for drinks. And unfortunately, in the United States, we don't really have a ton of third spaces like this. And so, Patricia, I was wondering if you could elaborate a little more on the role of the piazza in Italy and what exactly, do they mean to people?
The piazza, Emily, is a social event. When you live in these small towns, everyone knows everyone else. Even in a place like Padova, when you go to the piazza in the morning, you buy your fruit and your vegetables. After a while, the vendors get to know you. They know you're coming every Wednesday or every Thursday. They know you're coming to buy a certain thing. There'll be a bar where you stop off. You might meet a friend and have a coffee. You might also think, oh, it's 12 o'clock. It's time for a spritz. So during the day, you'll find maybe people, seniors, meeting with their friends. You'll find maybe housewives getting their shopping in between work and going home to make the lunch. They're grabbing a quick coffee. And then you'll find in the afternoon, old friends meeting, students meeting. When I'm in Padua, very often I meet my friends in the piazza for an aperitivo. So it's a social event. And the bars get to know people. They don't see you for a few days. They say, where's Maria? Has anybody seen her? Oh, where have you been now? When I go back to my piazza, they say, where have you been? We haven't seen you for a few days. So it's a social event. People talk. Have you seen what's happening on the television? Did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? Oh, look at this bargain I found. It's, people talk to each other in the piazza.
Oh, I love it. That's so cozy.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. You're never alone now. Never alone.
It kind of sounds like one big living room for everyone in the neighborhood.
It is, even if you live alone and you're coming home at night, if you stop in the piazza and you have a liquid dinner, someone has said good evening, they've said good night to you. So it's a social event.
I love that. All right, well, we are going to change gears a little bit now and see some of Padova's world-class art.
Padova's Scrovini Chapel, with its precious 14th century Giotto frescoes, is one of Italy's most beloved art treasures. Considered too fragile to be seen by huge numbers of people, sites like this are open only to a limited number of visitors who make a reservation in advance. Wallpapered with Giotto's beautifully preserved cycle of frescoes, the glorious chapel, painted in about the year 1300, depicts the lives of Jesus and Mary. Giotto, considered the first modern painter, painted scenes that were more realistic and human than anything that had been done for 1,000 years. Moving beyond medieval 2D and gold leaf backgrounds, with these realistic, groundbreaking frescoes, Giotto introduces nature, rocks, trees, animals, as a backdrop for religious scenes. His people, with their voluminous, deeply creased robes, are as sturdy and massive as Greek statues. Their gestures are simple but expressive. Arm raised shows anger. Head tilted down says dejection. Arms flung out indicate anguish. And a tender kiss, caring love. Giotto's storytelling style is straightforward, and anyone with a knowledge of the Bible can read the chapel like a picture book. In The Betrayal of Christ, amid the crowded chaos of Jesus' arrest, Giotto skillfully creates a focus upon the central action. Judas embraces Jesus, looks him straight in the eyes, and kisses him. In The Deposition, Jesus has been taken down off the cross, and his followers weep and wail over his lifeless body. John the Evangelist spreads his arms wide and shrieks, his cries echoed by anguished angels above. Each face is a study in grief. Giotto emphasizes the human vulnerability of these figures. And like a centerpiece on the far wall is the Last Judgment. Christ oversees the action as the saved on his right emerge grateful from their graves. And the damned on his left are just kicking off a hellish eternity. Satan is a grotesque ogre munching on sinners. Around him, demons torture the damned in a scene right out of the Inferno by Dante, who happened to be Giotto's friend. Calmly isolated from the action is Enrico Scrovini, who paid for all this art in an attempt to gain forgiveness for the sins of his wealthy and greedy father. These frescoes are considered by many to be a precursor of the Renaissance to come. With this masterpiece, created 200 years before Leonardo and Michelangelo, Giotto seems to be making it clear Europe was breaking out of the Middle Ages.
Okay, Patricia, I would like to hear a little bit more about Giotto's backstory. I read that he was actually discovered as a 12-year-old painting rocks, painting sheep on rocks. He was a 12-year-old shepherd. And then he ends up becoming one of the most famous painters of his time. Can you tell us a little bit more about how he achieved this greatness and also a little more on what he did for the Renaissance?
Well, really everything we know about Giotto, which is very little, we know from an art historian named Giorgio Vasari. And Giorgio Vasari is going to write a book called The Lives of the Artists. And Giorgio Vasari, of course, is a Florentine. So he tells us a bit about Giotto's life. He says that Giotto was apprenticed to the artist Cimabue. And they say that Cimabue discovered Giotto. Now, again, we know very little about him. We know he came from a little town just outside Florence, probably came from a family. He was a shepherd boy, so quite a humble beginnings. He, of course, they found him painting the sheep on the rock. So he was inspired by nature. And he is the artist who's going to take us from the Byzantine art. He's going to bridge that gap, okay? He's going to make art more natural. He's a great storyteller. That's something else we know about him. And we also know that he wasn't a very good-looking man, but we know that he was very virile. He had about 8 children, 8 or 10 different accounts. But when he was working in Padova, they say his good friend Dante Alighieri, none other than the Dante from Dante's Inferno, comes to visit him. And Dante apparently is looking at these paintings and these frescoes, and he's saying, you know what? He's looking at the frescoes and he's saying, you know, these are amazing. Look at the emotion in these frescoes, how beautiful they are. He said, but your sons are so ugly. This is his friend, remind you. And he says to Giotto, how come you make such beautiful frescoes, but you made such ugly boys? And Giotto says, well, you know, I paint by day, I made them by night. And that's the story. Again, he had his own little workshop in Florence. And again, we know very little about him. We know that he had 8 children and the Florentines loved him. Eventually, he's going to become the architect of the Bell Tower in Florence, but he's going to die before it's completed. And he's buried inside, just on the edge of the Duomo, in the Duomo of Florence.
Oh, wow.
Very private person. We know he has his own little group of artists who he's teaching to paint. We've got several pieces of his in Florence and in the art galleries, but he is going to bring religious art to life. And again, nobody tells a story like Giotto. This is a storybook in color.
Certainly.
It's a story.
Yeah. And
if he'd been around today, he would have been a movie director.
Yes, if he was born today, that's probably
movie director.
Probably the career he would have had instead.
And it's amazing. And you need you need the reservation for this chapel. It isn't a place you can just turn up after you've been deionized. You go into a special little room, you're watching the video, and it's removing all of the gunk from your body, all the humidity, it's cleaning you. You're watching the video, you don't realize you're being cleansed, because we, the tourists, we are the most dangerous thing for a piece of art. And then you go in to see this amazing chapel. And of course, you only have a few minutes in there, so run as soon as the doors open, get in there. And if you like, maybe hire a local guide to go with you for the day in Padua, because there's so much to see in here. And it's nice of someone to explain it to you, an expert.
I totally agree. And I'm glad that you mentioned that this needs to be booked in advance, because you don't want to be heartbroken when you get to Padua.
This is one thing you don't want to miss.
Getting around this part of Italy is easy. Padova and Verona are just minutes apart on the main Venice to Milan train line. Next stop, Verona.
Verona, at the base of the Alps and nestled in a bend of the Adige River, is another leading city in the Veneto. Its main attractions are its wealth of Roman ruins, like this bridge dating from the 1st century BC. Remnants of its 14th century boom time, and its 21st century quiet, pedestrian-only ambiance. Ancient Romans considered Verona an ideal last stop before heading north over the Alps. This well-preserved arena, the 4th largest in the Roman world, is a popular venue for events even today.
Over the centuries, crowds of up to 25,000 spectators have filled this place, cheering Roman gladiator battles, medieval executions, and modern plays, including Verona's popular Summer Opera Festival.
Climb to the top and imagine the spectacles this arena has hosted for over 2,000 years.
Okay, Patricia, how does this arena stack up against Rome's Colosseum?
Well, they're very different. For a start, this is smaller. And you know, Rome's Colosseum, as the Romans like to call it, was the Super Bowl. I mean, this is the province. So it's much smaller. It's more heavily restored. During World War II, there were some bombs dropped around Verona. A lot of damage was done. So the outer walls are still original, but the interior has been restored quite a bit. So it does look as though it's in better shape than the Colosseum. But it's a lot smaller, but it is older than the Colosseum.
And have you attended any events here yourself?
Quite a few. I was really lucky in the past, Emily. I don't think it would happen nowadays, but in the past I worked for this company who always gave me a ticket to go and see the opera. And usually they gave me a good seat, which was on the lower side, the gradinati numerati, which are not right down there where the red seats are. These are the most expensive, not always the best, but you can wear your tiara if you're sitting down there. But the seats up on the side, you see, and you have a great view of the stage. They're numbered seats, and it's great acoustic in there. This is a brilliant acoustic in the arena, and you can take your cushion with you. If you're in the numbered gratinati, you get your cushion included. But the higher up you are, it's always good to bring your own cushion and maybe even, a little bottle of water. And don't forget your umbrella, because we have summer storms. And remember, people go to the opera usually about 9 o'clock at night. It starts. And you're not going home until the end, which usually ends with somebody dying. So it's lovely. It's lovely just to be sitting under the stars, and it's all about the music. It's about the ambiance, and you just know that it's going to end in tears.
Mm-hmm.
So it's wonderful. And they've had some great directors there. Franco Zeffirelli. And I was looking last night. It's affordable. You can get a ticket for about 50 euros. 50 euros, it's affordable. It's not something that's, overpriced. So wonderful experience in the summer.
Very cool. And for me, at least, it never gets old that these ancient monuments are essentially used the same way that they were thousands of years ago. I was going to say just without the dying part, but
Yeah.
you mentioned there's still people dying on stage in the opera. So, but yeah, it just never gets old to me. It's so cool.
And you know something, Emily? Verona is very important because they consider themselves, this is where Maria Callas, this is where she started really her career. After World War II, she came to Verona, and she lived just outside Verona, and she had two homes actually, one in Verona and one on Lake Garda. And this is where she spent 10 years of her life. This is really where her career began, in Verona. So they're very proud of that this was the city that, gave Maria Callas that push.
Amazing. Well, if you're in Verona, definitely check the events calendar for the Colosseum.
Verona's market square is Piazza Erbe. People have gathered here since Roman times, when this was a forum or market, and it remains a market to this day. The 16th century frescoes, characteristic of this region, earned Verona a nickname, the Painted City. The Venetian lion has hovered over this square since 1405, when it reminded locals that they were ruled by Venice. During medieval times, this stone canopy held the scales used by merchants. A fountain has bubbled here for 2,000 years. This statue, originally Roman, lost its head and arms. After a sculptor replaced them, locals dubbed her Verona's Madonna. And what's with this whale's rib? It's been hanging here for 4 centuries, likely a souvenir brought home from the Orient by spice traders. I'm popping into a wine bar to learn about Grappa. North Italy is Grappa country, and Oresta, who runs this bar, introduces the local firewater with a passion clearly shared by a couple of his regulars.
Giancarlo! Bevete.
Once she can break free of Giancarlo's perhaps over-friendly embrace, my friend Valeria helps translate Oresta's Grappa wisdom.
The more the aging, the smoother it gets.
So wine is made out of grape juice. What's Grappa made out of?
Grappa is made out of seeds, skins, and stems of the wine. Same wine.
It's the leftover material after the wine process.
Exactly. exactly.
Extreme wine.
Yes, yes. Do you like it?
A little bit.
Not too much.
Not too much.
Yes.
Allora, scusi, in Italian, how do you say grappa helps you make friends? In Italiano.
La grappa aiuta a farsi degli amici.
Esatto.
Of course.
Exactly, of course, of course.
Oreste helps you make friends.
Okay, I have to admit the skins and stems left over from wine grapes does not sound particularly appetizing. So, Patricia, I was wondering if you could give us like an elevator pitch for grappa.
Well, grappa is a bit like white lightning. You know, every country has their grappa. You have moonshine, poaching in Ireland, raki, sake, maybe not. But anyway, grappa is sort of like, it's a bit like paint stripper, Emily, nail polish remover, antifreeze. And some people swear by it. They say it's a digestive, you know. And really, we're very fortunate because the dregs of the barrel, they can really only be sold to people who make grappa. So, you know, it is and you can put it in your coffee. Let's say you wake up one morning, you don't feel too good. You put a shot of grappa in your espresso. It's a bit like hair of the dog, you know. And that should straighten you.
Yeah.
You got it?
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Yep. So I think it gives you an idea of what grappa is.
Yeah, so it has its place in society, it sounds like. And Jean
Yeah.
is quite obviously a fan here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, before we keep moving on with our tour, I just wanted to remind you all that we are so lucky because we get to ask Patricia questions about Verona, Padova, and Ravenna at the end of tonight's show. So this is just a reminder to submit your questions in the Q&A, and we might just get to pick Patricia's brain at the end of the show.
Medieval Italian cities were often dominated by a single powerful family. Just as the Medici family ruled Florence, this castle is a reminder that the Scaligeri family ran the city of Verona back in the 14th century.
The Scaligeri Castle evokes Verona's golden age, when the city was one of Europe's great economic powers. If these ornate family tombs are any indication, the Scaligeri had no problem with self-esteem. And by building their tombs on pillars, they made sure they'd be looked up to even in death. Sooner or later, those wandering Verona's streets will be flushed into a very crowded courtyard. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet made Verona a household word, and this is supposedly Juliet's balcony. But alas, a visit here has nothing to do with those two star-crossed lovers, and Juliet never lived in this house. Still, busloads of tourists gaze at the almost believable balcony, scribble a Valentine on the walls, and take part in the tradition of rubbing the breast of Juliet's statue. Why? For a better love life. It's fun to observe the scene, knowing that all this commotion was started by a clever tour guide back in the 70s as a way to attract visitors to Verona. The wall of padlocks is a popular fad, enabling lovers to prove that their hearts are eternally locked up.
Fans of Romeo and Juliet will be happy to note that Shakespeare's inspiration for the Montagues and Capulets was two real feuding families from here in Verona, the Montecchi and the Capellos. And if Romeo and Juliet had existed and were still alive, they'd recognize much of their hometown.
All right. So for travelers who are also fans of Shakespeare, does Verona host any Shakespeare festivals that they could plan their trip around?
Yes, they do. They hold them, I think it's in August, July and August. They have in the Roman Theatre, so not the amphitheatre, the Roman Theatre, which is the other side of the Adige River, underneath the castle of St. Peter's. And that's where they hold some usually Shakespearean plays because you have Two Gentlemen of Verona, Taming of the Shrew, and Romeo and Juliet. And we believe that Shakespeare might even have spent some time in Verona himself because he's so accurate in his writing. But yep, you can go online and you can book it, I think, at enjoyverona.et.
So it sounds like a very immersive literary pilgrimage awaits Shakespeare fans in Verona. I personally really like literary sightseeing. I think it adds just another opportunity to connect with a place just in like a different type of way. So I think there's no shame in geeking out over Shakespeare while in Verona.
And I love Juliet's Balcony because I love the Dire Straits song. One of my favorite all-timers.
Perfect. Well, we are going to continue on with a little bit more time in Verona and then on to Ravenna to finish things up. But yeah, if you have not gotten your questions in yet, there is still time. So we are looking forward to that Q&A segment at the end of the show.
Right now, my love story is all about food, and I'm joining local friends for dinner at Enoteca Con Grande. This is a classic little mom-and-pop restaurant, with Giuliano helping diners match fine Italian wines with just the right local dishes, while stylish Karina is in the tiny kitchen making sure every dish is just right. My favorite way to eat in Italy is to trust the chef and just say, bring it on. Giuliano is serving us an array of plates. Each celebrates fine ingredients of this region, and Giuliano, along with Franklin and Marina, are helping us appreciate what we're eating and drinking.
This is such beautiful food, and it's such beautiful wine.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having the beautiful food with no beautiful wine?
Not really. It would be like being at La Fenice, the opera, first row, and being in bad company, someone who doesn't appreciate opera music and would prefer rock music, let's say. It wouldn't be the right thing.
Next up, eggplant parmigiana and burrata from Puglia.
Do you talk about the food as you eat it? Is this part of
Yes, absolutely, constantly. Any age without getting bored. We might get drunk, but not bored. Italians love to talk about food. Well, it's in their DNA. What we have here.
As the cannelloni with fontina and duck ravioli with amarone arrive, we learn that even in a fine restaurant like this, diners have a higher standard than you'd expect. La Mamma.
Italian men who adore cooking will always refer to La Mamma, their mother. That's the answer to everything.
So it goes back to your childhood?
Absolutely, yes. Sure. To go to a restaurant is wonderful, but how La Mamma cooked, nobody can equal that.
And finally, beef cheeks stewed in amarone with polenta, just as La Mamma made it.
Rick, salute. Cheers.
Mr. Mama.
La Mamma, okay.
A 2-hour train ride takes us through the lush Po River Valley, just south of the Veneto, to Ravenna. Ravenna is a charming, if underwhelming, town of 140,000 with a fascinating history and some of Italy's most amazing art treasures. Ravenna is on the tourist map for one reason. Its 1,500-year-old churches decorated with best-in-the-West Byzantine mosaics.
Imagine it's the year 500 AD. The Roman Empire has fallen in the West, barbarians have sacked the city of Rome, and Europe is falling into the Dark Ages. Yet the eastern half of the empire, ruled from dazzling Constantinople, present-day Istanbul, has morphed into Byzantium and becomes the pinnacle of civilization. The Byzantine Emperor Justinian then brings order and stability to this part of Europe, making Ravenna the westernmost pillar of his realm.
His church of San Vitale stands as a sanctuary of order in the midst of all that chaos. Its interior is decorated with lavish mosaics, countless vibrantly colored chips the size of your fingernail that served as propaganda for an alliance between the church and the emperor. high above the altar, Christ is in heaven, sitting on a celestial orb, overseeing creation, symbolized by the green earth below his feet. And running things here on earth is Emperor Justinian, sporting both a halo and a crown to show he's leader of both the church and the state. Justinian brings together both military and church leaders, all united by the same vision. Facing the emperor is his wife, Theodora, and her entourage. The former dancer who became his mistress, then empress, is decked out in jewels and pearls and carries a chalice to consecrate the new church.
I want to hear a little bit more about Justinian and Theodora. Can you tell us a little bit more about who they were as people and as rulers, and why exactly they were pouring so many resources into a church that was in an outpost of their empire?
Well, Justinian, his dreams, remember the Roman Empire in the West had fallen, and Justinian's dream was to retake Rome. And Justinian's Byzantine Empire corresponded to roughly the empire that Augustus and Mark Antony's share of the Roman Empire, but that's another story, so we won't go there. So Justinian, he is the emperor in Constantinople, and it's called the Byzantine Empire, but it's called Byzantine later on by the Greeks. He considers himself Roman. They consider themselves Roman. They are the most glamorous couple. And he, of course, is he's adopted by the emperor at the time. He's a lot older than Theodora. Theodora, she has a very interesting past. She grows up in the Hippodrome, so the Hippodrome in Constantinople, and her father is a bearkeeper. Her mother's probably an acrobat and a dancer. Her mother's an acrobat and a dancer. So she sort of grows up in the circus, multiplied by about 100. That's what it's like. Chariot races, that sort of thing. And of course, we have some writings about her by a historian from Palestine in the 6th century. His name is Procopius, and he's pretty mean about her. You know, he's scabrous, actually, the things he says about Theodora, that she would perform in nothing more than her pants because you weren't supposed to be completely naked. Minions would put seeds on her private parts. Ducks were trained to remove these. So he doesn't say too many nice things about Theodora. He sort of says she's a prostitute, she was an actress. And like in the Roman time, you know, being an actress and a prostitute, it sort of went hand in hand. The Romans didn't think too highly of anybody who was an actress, but Theodora, she, by today's standards, she would have been a child. So really, she was a sex slave. She grew up there in the Hippodrome. Her father dies. She gets a patron who's a bit of a brute, Heraclius, I think his name is, and he takes her, I'm not sure if it's Libya or somewhere in Egypt, but he beats her. And she leaves him and she goes to Alexandria, where she has this religious experience, comes back to Constantinople, and she meets Justinian. And basically, he has his uncle change the law so that he can marry her. And he utterly adores her. They love each other. She has him change some of the laws. For example, he cancels the death penalty for women who are charged of adultery. He also gives divorced women custody of the children. And he enforces the death penalty for rape. So she turns him into more or less a feminist. And this is all from her. She also tries to, she has many prostitutes locked up, incarcerated actually, and she tries to get them to lead a better life. So she's quite an interesting character, and she ends up a saint as well.
Wow.
She dies sadly very young. Sorry, Emily. She dies when she's in her 40s, probably cancer. And he's devoted to her. Like I said, he's a lot older than she is, maybe 17, 18 years. He outlives her again by another 17, 18 years, which is pretty sad. He never quite forgets her. We say that whenever he goes past her tomb at Constantinople, he always stops and lights a candle. So.
And I believe you mentioned to me earlier that the fact that they were facing each other actually in these mosaics actually symbolize that they're equals.
They are equals. They're equals. You can see she has a halo around her head as well. And she's dressed in these beautiful jewels. And if you look at the bottom of her robe, if you get the chance to go here or you have a book, because this is on the cover of every book about Byzantine, you can see the three wise men at the bottom of Theodora's robes. So, pretty ornate. She's holding the bowl for the wine. Justinian is holding the other bowl, which is for the bread. So she is his co-ruler, He considers her his equal. And Justinian, he's quite unlucky, He gets blamed as well for the many wars. He takes Italy from the south, pretty much like Belisarius, and just like the Allies are going to do in World War II. But I think he's unlucky because the plague, the Black Death appears, and they say it carried off about 10,000 per day. Now, that historian I was telling you about, Procopus, he tends to exaggerate quite a lot, but many think he didn't exaggerate with this. So it was during his reign that, so many people died from the Black Death that he was very unlucky.
All right, well, there are quite a few mosaics to take in here, so we are going to continue our tour of this church, and then we will head to our question and answer segment.
Yeah.
As pilgrims have done for centuries, visitors marvel. Appreciate the symmetry. At the top of the arch, the circle with the monogram of Christ, I for Jesus and X for Christ, symbolizes perfection and eternity. Floating above the arch, two angels hold rays of sun. The ceiling above is a festive celebration of God's creation with 80 different birds from the 6th century, most still flying around Ravenna today. All creation swirls around Christ as the sacrificial lamb, supported by 4 angels. Everything sparkles with colorful Bible scenes told with a 6th century exuberance. This was a time of transition, and many consider these mosaics both the last ancient Roman and the first medieval European works of art. For instance, this image of Christ is beardless, the style of the ancient Romans. And nearby is the standard medieval portrayal of a bearded Jesus. Yet each were created by artists of the same generation.
Okay, Patricia, I have just one more question for you about this church. And I was hoping we could talk a little bit more about the symbols here. Rick just said that symmetry symbolizes perfection. What other symbols should we be familiar with, and how could they help us unpack all of these ornate mosaics?
Well, this church is an octagon, so 8 sides. And for the Byzantines, they adopted the octagon because they believed that Christ created the earth, the world, on the day after the 7th day, which was the Sabbath. So the 8th day is when the world was created. And also the Jews believed that Noah, at the time of the Great Flood, was saved with 8 members of his family. So the octagon is very important, especially for the Byzantines. So in this period, you tend to find a lot of octagons. So that's another symbol. Then you have the peacock, immortality. And they also believe that when the peacock opened its feathers, it was the eye of God. If you get to this church, you'll notice around the sides you have the apostles. There are dolphins underneath the apostles. And this also represents, it could be from the gospel, when Christ says he will make the apostles fishermen of men. You also have little flowers. The red flowers represent the drops of blood from Calvary. The lily, spirituality. So these are just some of the symbols that you have around there. Justinian is dressed in purple. Purple was the color of the emperor. It was the color that Cleopatra introduced to Julius Caesar. So there's
That's why I'm
another.
wearing it tonight.
That's why you're wearing it. So Justinian is wearing purple as well, you know? So there's so many symbols in here. Justinian is surrounded by military, by administrators, and the church to let people know that, you know, he basically is the ruler he's God's representative of the military, the administration, and the church. So there's so many symbols in here as well. The Lamb of God, also the labyrinth, the journey of life, loads of them inside. The vines, so lots of symbols.
Fascinating. Yeah, lots to unpack, clearly.
Shells, seashells, gems, mother of pearl, beautiful stones.
All right. And would you say that this is also a site that should be booked in advance?
Maybe yes. You know, Ravenna has 8 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So there's not only San Vitale to visit. I've only ever really seen 3 or 4 of these sites, but Ravenna is a great place to visit because you also have a museum dedicated to Lord Byron for anybody who loves literature. And you also have the tomb of Dante Alighieri. You have the Neonian Baptistry as well, beautiful baptistry. You also have the other Basilica of Santa Apollinare. You could easily pass a whole day in Ravenna enjoying these beautiful mosaics. You could go online and book your ticket, then you have a timed entrance, the Mausoleum of Galla Placidia, but there's a lot to see in Ravenna.
And I like to say, you know, book in advance because again, you will avoid heartbreak.
Yeah, and you'll have your timed entrance and they're very flexible, but at least you have that ticket, you just get it scanned. It's a lovely place, lovely city to visit. One of my favorites.
So much sightseeing greatness awaits discovery in Europe's second-tier cities. Well, you'll probably see Venice first. Don't overlook the gems of the mainland nearby. Its distinctive cuisine, its history and sumptuous art, and its people, embracing today with classic Italian flair.
I hope you've enjoyed our look at 3 delightful cities in the north of Italy: Ravenna, Padova, and Verona. I'm Rick Steves. Until next time, keep on traveling. Ciao.
All right. Well, that concludes our watch along, and we do have time for a couple questions for you, Patricia. But before we get to those, I would like to remind everyone, since some people did miss our announcements at the top of the show, that we would love to collect some summer travel reports from all of you. So if you would like to share 2 to 3 pictures and/or a paragraph on your summer tales thus far, please send them to us at share@ricksteves.com, and we may be able to highlight them on our season finale next week. And again, we are, at the end of this show, going to invite you to participate in a brief survey. So if you would like to share your feedback with us or what you'd like to see more of on MNT, we would love to hear your thoughts. And lastly, right before we have our question and answer segment, we have our word from our sponsors. So tonight we've seen lots and lots of amazing jaw-dropping art. And if you're hungry for more, I encourage you to tune in to Rick's mini-series, Art of Europe. This is a 6-part series during which Rick makes an ambitious sweep through the entire history of European art, starting with prehistoric art and ending in the modern age. He even covers our friend Giotto, who painted the Scrovini chapel that we visited earlier. And you can watch that for free on our website or our YouTube page. And I believe Gabe just dropped a link in the chat, so thank you, Gabe. And now I would love to close our show with just a couple questions for you, Patricia. And let's see.
Make them easy, make them easy.
Yes. Yes, nothing too crazy tonight, but we have a couple people in the audience wondering what other places they might visit in the Veneto if they are visiting these three cities? What would you add to their itinerary?
Well, in the Veneto, Vicenza. Vicenza is a beautiful city. Vicenza is only about 15 minutes by train. It's en route to Verona, and it's the city of Andrea Palladio. Andrea Palladio, who gave us the Palladian architecture. So much of your architecture in the United States, like Monticello, it was influenced by Palladio. And there's also some great Bellini art in Vicenza, the Santa Corona. I'd say Vicenza, Asolo, apart from having wonderful cheese, Bassano del Grappa. Bassano del Grappa is one of my favorite places, actually. Bassano del Grappa. That's where I would go. I would take a train to Bassano del Grappa. It will be a pleasant surprise. Easy to spend a whole day in Bassano. That's Bassanodel, and as in the Grappa, the moonshine, okay? That's a wonderful place to visit in the Veneto. So you could spend a day in Bassano del Grappa. Obviously, there's Venice, but I would say Bassano del Grappa. And if you're going to head towards the Dolomites, you could make Conigliano your base before going up towards places like Alleghe and the Falzarego, Cortina d'Ampezzo, although I wouldn't go there at the moment. It's still in the Veneto, Cortina d'Ampezzo, because they're preparing for the Winter Olympics. So I would stay away from Cortina d'Ampezzo for the moment. But the Veneto, lots of places. And also if you're going from Verona to Ravenna, I think the train stops in Ferrara. I have a funny feeling that it's a changeover mainly in Ferrara. So that's another amazing place to visit.
Well, it sounds like you could fill a whole itinerary.
You could spend a week. You could spend easily a week just, visiting little places off the beaten track. And you can make it as active or you can make it as relaxing as you like.
All right. Well, on a similar note, Devin, who joined the show tonight, is visiting Padua and Venice in November, and he's wondering how he should dress for the weather. Do you have any packing advice for Devin?
Well, Devin, it will be cooler. It will be cooler, but November is usually a great month in Italy. Now, we've had a lot of rain recently. The past 2 or 3 weeks, we've had a lot of rain, which is usually a sign we are going to have one of those amazing winters, which means sunny days, cool when the sun isn't shining, that I'd bring a heavy jacket, but not too many heavy clothes. You won't be wearing shorts. You won't be wearing shorts. You won't have too many. You won't need short sleeves. But I would say spring, autumn weather. Easily. Yeah. And don't forget your shades.
Perfect weather for sightseeing, it sounds like.
Oh, perfect. November is beautiful. And the shoulder season is usually the best time to visit places.
Generally lower prices.
A lot quieter.
Less tourists.
More locals around.
I love it. Well, I think I will ask you just one more question, Patricia. And we have an audience member wondering what your favorite wow moment from any of these cities is on our Village Italy tour. Do you have a wow moment?
From these cities we visited, my favorite wow moment is looking at the mosaics in San Vitale. They always blow me away.
And we got to just a tiny portion of them.
Yeah. Walking in there, just how the light touches these mosaics differently every time.
So you're always seeing something new.
Always seeing something different. Different colors. San Vitale is my favorite place.
Very cool. Well, I definitely got to get myself signed up on one of your Village Italy tours soon. But I think, it's about that time where we wrap up the show. So I just want to say thank you so much, Patricia, for joining us, for waking up at an ungodly hour to talk about these cities. You are such a treat, and you've really, brought these cities to life.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's time I put my pajamas on and get back to bed.
Yes, definitely time for that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you, Emily.
All right, thank you, and have a good night, Patricia. And I would like to thank all of you for joining us this evening. Next week is the last episode of the season of Monday Night Travel. We will be joined by Monday Night Travel favorite and guidebook author Lucas Peters, and he'll be covering his family's recent Portugal road trip. So you can sign up for that on our website. And until then, happy travels.